Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to the August 25th, 2025 briefing of the Forsyth County Commissioners. And we are briefing for the meeting this Thursday on August the 28th. And after we review the agenda items, we are going to spend a few minutes discussing a possible resolution regarding the Southeast Supply Enhancement Pipeline Project. We will actually, when we adjourn, we actually have a closed session after the meeting today. So without any further ado, I'll turn the meeting over to the county manager to review the agenda items.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, Commissioners, staff, and guests. Agenda item number 1 is a public hearing on the Forward 2045 Comprehensive Plan and a resolution adopting the plan. Chris Murphy, our planning director, will brief this item.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I am actually not going to brief the item. I'm going to give just a brief overview, and then I'm going to turn it over to Amy Crum, who's the Assistant Planning Director, and she and her staff were the primary architects of the plan. This has been a 4+ year effort whenever you count the amount of time we put into background research, researching other plans to try to find best practices. And we had a couple years of outreach and development of the plan, and the City Council adopted the plan back in the late fall of 2024. And we were bringing it to the commissioners, but we basically held off bringing that until the completion of the HDR study. And the HDR study was presented to this entity several weeks ago. And we actually have updated some of our growth management area plan maps related to some of the potential that was discovered through that HDR process. I do just want to reiterate again, this is a very broad plan. This is a plan that is aspirational. Obviously, it is a policy document. Anything that would have any teeth, such as changes to the ordinance, would come back before this body to implement any changes that we decided to make to the ordinance. We would also have more parcel-specific recommendations through future area plans, but we need this document adopted before we can begin those endeavors. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Amy Crum, and she will walk you through what we've done and what the plan does recommend. So thank you.
Good afternoon. Some of this will look very familiar to you from past presentations, but just to refresh everyone, like Chris said, the comprehensive plan is the official public document that guides growth and development. And I want to stress the word guide. It is not a policy document that makes any sort of change to zoning districts or ordinances. It is a guide. Anything that would make those particular changes has its own public process and public hearing process before the board or in the commission. It is a community-driven vision. And again, as a vision document, it is very high level. It does not get into specific details. It just sort of sets the direction that we want to go into the future regarding growth and development. We did an extensive outreach, which I'll talk about here in a minute, but that's where we get our recommendations from, is that community-driven aspect of it is from that input from the public. We are guided by state statute that requires that we have a reasonably maintained comprehensive plan because we do our own zoning. For us, that's about every 10 to 15 years that we update the comprehensive plan. Our current comprehensive plan that the county falls under right now is Legacy 2030 update, and that was adopted in 2012. Before that, it was a legacy document, which 2001. So you can see that we sort of follow a 10 to 15 year cycle of updating these documents. But as a vision document, it serves as a foundation for other policies and plans that the city or county may undertake. And again, this document is city-county. I will say that repeatedly, but it is city-county, so it looks at both aspects. And so it is a foundation for our area plans, which we will be starting a new round of those that get into parcel-specific data and recommendations of how to implement these broad goals. It also serves as a document for other topic-based plans, whether it be done by the planning department or other departments, particularly maybe like the transportation department. It serves as that guide for them as well. So think your bicycle and pedestrian plans or greenway plans, any other sort of topic-based plan you can think of can really draw from the input that was received during this planning process and the vision that was articulated in this planning process. Policies, capital expenditures, all look to this document for guidance, and as well as zoning decisions that are made when people request rezoning proposals. You'll see in our staff reports that we do mention back to the comprehensive plan for guidance. Chris touched on this briefly, but we started this back in the spring of 21, the height of COVID, with research, like we do everything else. And we really did a deep dive into our trends at the local level, but looking at national, regional trends regarding growth and development, but also looking at what other communities are doing with their comprehensive plans to find what worked best, what didn't work best, what we liked, what we didn't like, and to see if there's some trends there that we can incorporate. And then we moved into marketing these plans, and so we went out to the public and started just drumming up support for the whole process, creating a contact list for people to be engaged in the process and letting folks know that the process was beginning. Through spring of 23 to spring of 24, we did outreach. And so we posed a number of public meetings and different stakeholder groups and to get input that was incorporated into our recommendations. And then we began drafting the document, and we're at the final stage now with adoption. So here's that outreach and participation that we did. We did pretty extensive outreach that included an online survey, which had over 2,900 survey participants, which is really extraordinary for a broad level planning exercise. That contained over 4,000 written comments. We did a website for 2045.com, which is still active today, and it will continue to be active as we move forward through implementation. We went to 16 community events. These were things like the fair, the Walkertown Fall Festival, the Apple Festival, farmers markets, where people were. We really wanted to meet people where they were already at instead of asking them to come to us. We had 9 stakeholder meetings with 8 different stakeholder groups. We had 20 public input meetings. We had 11 initially, then we had 5 to talk specifically about land use, and then 4 to talk about just draft comments. And we also had an online option for people to provide their comments on the draft plan as well through the 2045 websites. We did teen exercises, we had a children's book, and then we had a marketing campaign that included TV, radio, social media, billboards with over a million impressions. And this is just simply a map showing where those community events, which are in the yellow-orange color, public input meetings, which are in the blue, and then the teen outreach events, which are in the green, where those were housed at. And then we try to get across the community there, different days, different times, different locations to hopefully make it easier for people to participate. One of the items that we knew going into this is that we are running out of land. It was talked about in Legacy 2030 update, and it's still very important today. Forsyth County is number 4 in population, but it's number 60 out of 100 in size. So we have a high population but low size. So we're a relatively small county. And we're approximately about 75% built out. And so we know housing is very important. We know the housing supply, just from a national level, is very critical at this stage. We know we need economic development opportunities for growth, for jobs and tax base. But we heard in the survey is that land preservation is very critical and important to people as well. And so we posed the question, what is the most important? If you had to rank these, what is the most important? And it came out to be that land preservation, followed by housing, followed by economic development. And we took that as not to say that land preservation is the number one important aspect of this plan, is that if you want land preservation to happen, you have to think really creatively of how you're going to address housing supply, as well as being very strategic of how you address economic development opportunities to really find that balance in there. And you also have to support your rural economy. And so you'll see recommendations about being strategic about housing, to develop where the infrastructure already exists, as well as to really support your rural economy and your local food markets and that, so that there is an option there for rural preservation and open space preservation. The document is based on 5 guiding vision themes, and through these themes, they sort of tackle all the aspects that came out of the input. And so in 2045, Forsyth County and Winston-Salem will have attainable housing and stable neighborhoods, strong economic opportunities, connected and accessible spaces, a vibrant character and identity, and a stable and healthy environment. And through the collective implementation of these, you'll have managed growth and land use. And you'll see that a lot of these recommendations and goals overlap through different themes because they serve different purposes, and there is sort of a web-based aspect to the goals, and that they can, by doing one thing, you can tackle a couple of different high-level goals. There are 3 guiding principles. When we looked at the input that we received from the public, 3 things came out that were equity, livability, and resiliency. And when we thought about how do you implement those, you implement those by attainable housing, job creation, quality of life, access, all of those items, and sustainability, all those items really help support and implement having an equitable, livable, and resilient community. And so when we talk about equity, we're talking about making sure that there's equal opportunities for all members of the community, no matter their age, ability, income, race, ethnicity. It's not about having equal outcomes. That's one thing we heard in the public comment. It was about equal outcomes. We don't talk about equal outcomes. We talk about equal opportunities. That whether or not you take advantage of those opportunities is personal choice, but we talk about making sure that we are not creating a barrier to any particular group in what we provide. Livability is quality of life, essentially, where you have good quality of life where residents can not just survive but thrive, with a great place to live, work, and play. And quality of life will vary depending on who you're talking to at residents. Some people want, rural character, some want active downtown. It just varies, but really making sure that we have the amenities and the housing and the jobs that folks need to really, really thrive as they age. And then resiliency is creating a resilient community so that we can withstand and adapt to and recover from changes. And whether it be disasters, something like Hurricane Helene, climate change, or technology changes, economic changes, whatever may come, that we can be resilient to those. Most people think of from a climate change perspective, but really from an being economically resilient is very critical as well. We've lost headquarters over the last decade that have changed the economic landscape, so making sure that we can weather those, making sure that technology changes very rapidly nowadays, so making sure that we can keep up with the changes in technology and providing the services that we need, and also making sure that we can keep up with the changes in demands from our residents and what they're looking for in their communities. So I'm going to go through these pretty quickly, but these are the goals for the different themes. Goal 1 and Goal 5 are equal. They're not in any particular order, is what I'm trying to say. They're just as important no matter what placement they are. So for attainable housing and stable neighborhoods, we have goals related to just housing abundance and supply. Goal 2 speaks to creating affordable housing for low and middle and moderate income individuals. Goal 3 is addressing historical injustices and inequities in our community as a result of past policies. Goal 4 is about creating well-designed neighborhoods that have access to services. And Goal 5 is related to housing insecurity and homelessness. For strong economic opportunities, we have retain and recruit companies for quality jobs, increase our supply of business and industrial park sites for future growth, and then bring economic opportunities to East and Northeast Winston-Salem, Forsyth County. That is an area that has historically been underserved from an economic standpoint. Goal 4 is about economic mobility, allowing folks to sort of move up the economic ladder through job training and education and workforce development. Goal 5, revitalizing downtown as a center for Forsyth County's economy. Goal 6 is promoting our local economy. And Goal 7, again, is fostering sustainable and vibrant local agricultural economy. Again, supporting that rural agriculture and rural economy. For connected and accessible spaces, this relates to transportation. So Goal 1 relates to having a network of sidewalks, greenways, and bike lanes, so your active transportation. Goal 2 is related to transit. Goal 3 is creating an environment where everyone feels safe traveling from point A to point B, so it's a safety component. Goal 4 is making sure that folks have access to needed services such as food providers, medical facilities, employment opportunities, and public amenities, no matter their ability. And Goal 5 is about sort of making sure our land use decisions and our transportation decisions are mutually supportive of each other because they are linked together. And then Goal 6 is about connectivity, making sure that we are connecting our network so folks don't have to drive 15 minutes just to go, a mile, basically, because they have to go all the way around. For vibrant character and identity, this really speaks to just community character, essentially, so having beautiful public works, whether it be parks, plazas, schools, maintaining clean and attractive neighborhoods, expanding our tree canopy and our quality green spaces. Goal 4 and 5 speak to historic preservation. Goal 4 is about actually preserving historic sites and historic buildings. Goal 5 is about sharing and educating people about our unique history in the community. Goal 6 is about, again, preserving our rural areas, and Goal 7 relates to public art. For a sustainable and healthy environment, Goal 1 is climate change mitigation. Goal 2 relates to access to clean air, water, and green spaces. Goal 3, develop standards and practices to mitigate sources of pollution and land use. Goal 4 is connecting parks, greenways, and other open space into an integrated system. And then we have preserve and protect our local ecology and natural landscapes, and then develop and support our local food economy. And then through managed growth and land use, we have, again, preserve our rural areas for agricultural uses in natural landscapes, prioritize development where infrastructure already exists before we start expanding out, and then be strategic about that expansion outward and where we develop to best accommodate future population growth, preserve our rural areas, and then strengthen municipal finances. And then Goal 4 is creating compatible transitions between land uses. So this is our new growth management areas map. It follows the same sort of typology as previous maps in that the red area is our GMA1, or city or town center. The orange is GMA2, urban neighborhoods. These are neighborhoods built prior to 1950. The yellow is suburban neighborhoods, or GMA3. These are areas that have seen the most growth recently, past 1950, but they are serviced by water and sewer infrastructure. GMA4 is the light green. These are future growth areas. This is where we would expand growth once GMA3 has been completely built out. They do require sewer and water expansion. And then GMA5 is the dark green, which is our rural areas, where we would limit growth into those areas. So we made 6 changes to this map. And let's see if this map, okay. So the small area to the west of Louisville, plus the 2 small areas down here by Clemens, and then this area in southeast Forsyth County, those changed to GMA3 because there are sewer projects underway, either planned or underway currently. Once a land has been serviced by public sewer, it automatically gets changed to GMA3. That's been a policy for a number of years in our department. This larger area here south of Clemens is, we kind of flip-flopped here for this one. It originally was GMA3 in the legacy document. It got switched to GMA4 in legacy 2030 update, and we're just going back to the original legacy recommendation. And then this larger area is probably the biggest change, and that really deals with the Beltway being constructed, and that really changed the character of this area up here. And so we looked at, with this new pressure for development up in the north and northeast portion of the county because of the Beltway, where can we strategically expand sewer? And we spoke with the utilities department, and we actually had 4 basins here. So we had, this is the largest one, and then we had 3 others just to the east of it. And our thought process here was, because this is directly adjacent to the Beltway is this line that goes right through here, it makes the most sense strategically, because there's already a GMA4 right here that would need to be serviced before you even got to this area. And then we also looked up over in this area as well, as part of our discussions with the utilities department. But because of the western leg of the Beltway not having a timeline or funding in place, we felt it would be premature to go ahead and put it on this, make that change now. However, likely coming for the next comprehensive plan, again, following that 10 to 15-year cycle, it'll probably at that point hopefully have a better idea when this will be constructed, and that area over here may change as well. So I just want to go real quickly through what we heard in the HDR study and how it relates to our growth management plan areas. And so the short-term sites, there's 3 of them. You can see them here in the magenta purple color. They're all located in GMA3. So that's really where we would want to see growth and development happen, is in that GMA3. The greenfield 3 to 10 years are in the blue, and they are all pretty much in GMA3 as well, except for this one might be slightly into GMA4 here, but again, serviced by water, sewer, and where we would want to see development happen. And looking at growth, greenfield development 10 to 20-year plus, these are in the purple. And these start to get into GMA4, but that coincides, again, thinking long-term strategically, it's a future growth. So this one's in GMA4. You have these are GMA3 and GMA4. This one's GMA3 down here. This, again, is the only one that's really into GMA5, and we looked at this area during our discussions with the utilities department. But again, since there is no timeline for the Beltway or funding for the Beltway, we felt that it was premature to go ahead and make that change on the GMA map. However, once the Beltway gets constructed, this area will change. And so this being a 10 to 20 plus year sort of category really fits with what our thought process was according to when we would actually sort of transition this to GMA4. There is an implementation section in this. It is not exhaustive, and that is by intent. It is organized by theme and goal. We wanted there to be flexibility. There's no timeline for completion because we know funding changes, staff changes, priorities change, other projects come up that will influence, the recommendation, technology changes, things change. A lot of things change. And so we wanted to incorporate that flexibility into the document to make sure we can adjust for those changing conditions as we move forward. And as Chris mentioned, the planning board adopted the plan on September 12th, and Winston-Salem City Council adopted the plan on November 18th. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Questions?
I do. In here, does any of this plan address accessible dwellings?
This, not specifically in this plan, it was a recommendation of Legacy 2030 update, and we did make changes, 22, to the city regarding accessory dwelling units or ADUs or granny flats, things like that. We did make those changes then. At the time, we did not incorporate the county in there, except for I think we reduced the parking, so there'd be no parking requirement, simply because of it's a different nature, really related to manufactured homes. Many of the ADUs that come into the county are manufactured homes. The city does not allow manufactured homes as ADUs, and they don't make them small enough to meet the size requirements that we're putting in for the city. There's 1,000 square foot maximum in the city for an ADU. I think the smallest manufactured home is 1,200 square feet, but don't hold me to that. But we can obviously look at that and make those changes if that's something that the board would want. And it totally would be supported by this plan and Legacy 2030 to extend those and look at how we can look at ADUs in the county and see if there's any way to streamline the process.
Well, I would like to look at it particularly for elderly folks who may be able, their adult children may be able to build a accessible dwelling for them rather than a nursing home. I would just like to see that if it's okay with the other members.
Yeah, absolutely, we can do that.
Okay. And one more question. Is anything in here that you think will cause more expense for developers?
No. If anything, we're trying to look at, because from a housing standpoint, one of the things we talk about is housing affordability, and that's different from affordable housing. A lot of people say that the same, but for us, housing affordability is not spending more than 30% of your household income on housing, and that's going to vary from housing to housing. And one of that is cost of development, and that we are trying to reduce where we can the cost of development. And so we're actually getting ready to hold housing input meetings to talk about land use changes that may help, deal with supply to get the cost down and however we can. I will say that from a strictly planning side, we are a little bit limited in what we can do, but there's obviously nothing in this plan that would limit another department from looking at this and using it as a guide to make their own changes in how and policies and procedures and how they move forward.
Thank you.
I have a question. Assuming we adopt this plan on Thursday, what's sort of your rough schedule for doing the actual detailed area plans? I mean, how quickly does that take place after?
We'll start fall. So we'll probably try to do 2 a year. That's our goal, just with staffing levels and the level of public input that they require. So our goal is to have one beginning this fall and then have another one starting in February, March timeframe.
Do you have sort of which area you would start with first?
Likely it will be that area up along the Beltway, because that is the area
That's what I would hope, because I
Yeah.
think that's a real important area to begin
Yeah.
thinking about at the moment, which was a big part of that HR study.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
In the preparation of the document, was there any attempt to survey active agricultural areas out in the county?
When you say survey, do you mean?
Identify where they are.
No, that's a level of detail beyond this. What we would do, we did speak to agricultural groups as part of our stakeholder meetings and our community meetings. We spoke with them to get their input, but actually do like a land survey, a visual survey of active either agricultural land or either working, because some of them isn't working, some of it's zoned agriculture, but it's not actually in production. No, we didn't. That was a little deeper.
Preservation of farmland is a goal within the plan.
Yes.
So how do you actually implement that in evaluation of rezoning requests? You have a request out near the edges of the growth management area 3, or perhaps slightly over the line in a GM4 area. It's new subdivision, lots of housing, but it's also being used as agricultural lands. How does that enter into the staff evaluation and recommendation to the planning board?
It would with any other, if it's a rezoning request that would come before you, we would look at it as a land use change. Now, if something is zoned agriculture, they can subdivide that parcel. There's a minimum acreage of 40,000 square feet. So, or RS40, if they came in and they wanted to subdivide that and meet the requirements of RS40, or if they wanted to do a PRD or something like that, they are well within their right to do that, and there's nothing that we could do to stop it as long as they meet the requirements and can meet all the logistics of getting their infrastructure and access and that sort of thing. But if it's from a rezoning request that comes in and say something is ag and wants to go RS9 or something like that, we would view that on a case-by-case basis, depending on where it's located, what its access is, does it make sense logistically? Are we talking about a site that's up at, northwest of Tobaccoville versus something that's right on the border of the city or something like that, depending on where it's located and the characteristics of the area. But ultimately, that decision would be left to this body, like similar to any other rezoning case.
All right, let's take an example of something that's a little closer in. You've got what could fairly be called competing goals. You have preservation of tree canopy, and you've also got increased density of housing. You've got a project that will increase density of housing, but it would take down the last remaining 10 acres of trees in an area. How do you evaluate that? As a practical matter. I mean, it seems that there is an inherent bias towards allow the development in all of this.
I'll answer that in a couple of ways. First off, a property owner has the absolute right to take down any trees they want.
We know that.
So barring anything, that property owner can clear that and timber it. The only thing, if they remove the tree stumps, it would need a erosion control permit. Otherwise, we would never see that in our department. Sure. We do have tree save components in our UDO. And those can be adjusted if it is the will of the public and the board. We can look at those to adjust to require more tree save. We can also promote development such as PRDs, planned residential developments, which have open space requirements. So it's a marriage between two. You can actually have the housing units the same density, they're just on smaller lots, but you have open space requirements and buffer yard requirements and things of that, both active and passive open space. So that is one component you can utilize to sort of find a balance between the two, to provide housing and then as well as protect either stream buffers, steep slopes, tree canopies, things of that nature.
That's an excellent example. So if a request comes in, you've got, say it's for the purpose of discussion, it's an RS20, and the request is RS7. Conventional subdivision, you're not involving the opportunities for the PRD for the retention of natural areas, and staff has to make a call in terms of what you recommend to the planning board. The planning board may or may not, in any given case, take a recommendation, but do you recommend for that, or do you recommend against that and point out that they could get the same number of units with the PRD and also advance the tree canopy goal?
It's a hard call because I don't have the specifics because every site is different. That said, again, any rezoning comes before an elected body for decision. But we do look at those and recognize that, not every site that comes in for rezoning makes logical sense from a planning standpoint, makes sense from if they're surrounded by RS20 and they want to come in with an RS7, that likely wouldn't make sense to us. And so we would likely recommend that, not recommend against approving that, but the decision ultimately lies with the elected bodies. But we do work with our developers really closely to try to minimize and find factors to find a nice middle ground. But we don't support everything that comes in. It just depends on the location and the characteristics of that site. So it's hard to give you a yes/no answer without actually knowing exactly what's going on, what's next to it, how the area has developed.
And I understand that has to be the answer. I just, in the discussion of priorities, I like to get you thinking about how you're going to treat specific case examples so that you don't have necessarily a default leaning that's going to dictate your answer in 9 out of 10 cases.
No, we don't. But there's also policies, if you're looking for land preservation, that this board itself, outside of zoning cases, can take up. At one point, we had farmland preservation program that was funded. We do have the voluntary agricultural district program. So there are other policies and avenues that can, outside of zoning cases, that can be undertaken to help support rural agriculture and land preservation.
Thank you.
Other questions? All righty, thank you very much.
Thank you, Amy. Agenda item number 3 is an amendment to the fiscal year 26 budget ordinance to appropriate funds from the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services for Agreement Addendum 415, Breastfeeding Peer Counselor Program. Nicole Priddy from our Public Health Department will brief this item.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. The appropriation of these funds will be used to staff and support the 2 full-time breastfeeding peer counselors in our WIC program who assist more than 1,000 WIC participants who are currently breastfeeding in our county. Happy to take any questions.
Questions?
Thank you.
Agenda item number 4 is an amendment to the fiscal year 26 budget ordinance to appropriate funds from the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services for Agreement Addendum 510, General Communicable Disease Control. Camilla Pleasance, our Assistant Public Health Director, will brief this item.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This budget ordinance amendment will appropriate $6,000 from the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services for an amendment to AA 510, which is the General Communicable Disease Control. These funds will be used to update the electronic reporting interface between Forsyth County Department of Public Health and the North Carolina State Laboratory of Public Health. Any questions that I can answer?
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 5 is an amendment to the fiscal year 26 budget ordinance to transfer funds to the Emergency Telephone System Fund. Kyle Wolf, our Budget Director, will brief this item.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is really a cleanup item. If you'll recall, at the June 19th meeting, the board approved an amendment to the 911 fund to accept a transfer of $1,395 due to a determination from the 911 board about ineligible expenditures. But unfortunately, we did not put the corresponding amendment to the general fund, and so this is really just cleaning up that item.
Any questions for Kyle? All righty, thank you.
Agenda item number 6 is an amendment to the County Capital Projects Ordinance to transfer project funding from the airport element to county buildings and economic development reserves. Kimberly Bussey, our Deputy Budget Director, will brief this item.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. In May of '23, County Commissioners approved a capital project for environmental testing, engineering, and site preparation at the Smith Minerals Airport, Site 5. It's about 64 acres out at the airport, which contains an old landfill to help identify options to address the landfill and possibly develop the site. This project used 22 PAYGO funds and that were identified for economic development. In February of '24, the airport commissioned an assessment of this site. Unfortunately, the project was deemed not viable at this time as the cost for property remediation was just too high. So this item takes the available balance of that project and moves it back into economic development reserves and a portion of that into county buildings for another capital project, which I'll talk about in just a moment. So the available balance on this project is $1,234,530. This item, again, will close the project and transfer the dollars. $88,000 will go into county buildings. And this is necessary as a correction to our May 22nd, 2025 item that created the new county capital CPO and cleaned up existing capital projects and consolidated into our new structure. Unfortunately, we cleaned up a little too well. One project, this is the fleet expansion in Winston-Salem Forsyth County co-location project. It needs this additional funding. It was closed prematurely. So this puts this money back for this project to finish that work. Largely, that project is finished. The expenditures that are remaining are mainly for reporting and management of the brownfield site. So this puts those funding back for that project. The remainder, there's a total of $1,141,530 is being returned to the economic development reserves element for future use or until the board finds another use for the funds. So that's a lot. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Kimberly?
Kimberly, I do, but it's really complex, so we can talk offline.
Sure, let me know.
Thank you.
Got it, thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 7 is an amendment to the fiscal year 26 budget ordinance to appropriate fund balance to pay the city of Winston-Salem for scrap tire. Kyle Wolf, our Budget Director, will brief this item.
Good afternoon again. So the county budget's revenue and expenditures related to the tire disposal fee distribution each year, which it receives from the state based on fees charged to consumers when they purchase new tires. Because the city operates the landfill in the county, these funds are required to be passed through to the city. There is a total of $381,510.57 from FY '23 and '24 that was not sent to the city, as well as $49,556.41, which is basically what came in over what we had budgeted in '25. So we needed to appropriate a total of $431,066.98 in order to pay these funds back over to the city. Are we going to answer any questions?
Any questions for Kyle?
So an offset's not available as a procedure?
It is not at this time, no, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item number 8 is a resolution authorizing execution of an amendment to the agreement with Partners Health Management for the provision of non-clinical support of Family and Children Division youth housed internally, and an amendment to the fiscal year 26 budget ordinance to appropriate revenue received from Partners for the provision of non-clinical support of Family and Children's Division with youth housed internally. Cindy Firkin from our Social Services Division will brief this item.
Good afternoon. Partners Health Management desires to increase the funding to the current contract for non-clinical support of Family and Children's Division youth housed in the Department of Social Services building. Awaiting appropriate placements in Department of Social Services will provide the fee-for-service internal housing. Billing is based on monthly payroll, overtime records, day sheet coding, food purchases, and travel time. The total amount billed to Partners during fiscal year '25 was $156,373.78, which includes the employee overtime, food expenses for children housed in the building. The total number of child bed nights during fiscal year '25 was 285. This figure represents the nights when staff were required to supervise children. Thus, multiple children may have been present on the same night. In total, 20 different children were housed internally for a combined number of 332 nights, while awaiting appropriate placements during the fiscal year, some for a few nights and some intermittently for multiple nights over the course of months. Under this agreement, total reimbursement is not to exceed $58,850. The original agreement provided for a reimbursement not to exceed $8,850 for one specified youth. This amendment increases the reimbursement amount by $50,000 to support non-clinical services for youth housed in the Social Services building during the current fiscal year, beginning July 1st, 25 through June 30th, 2026. And for fiscal year 26, during the month of July, we had only one child housed in the building, and that child was in the building for 14 nights. And I'm happy to answer any question.
I have one question. In the new, I guess, the Phoenix house, the Sturmer property that's out, that we have opened, I'm assuming, I'm just guessing, that some of the children, for example, the young people that would, in that number 200, whatever, the group from last year, some of those would have qualified to be in the Phoenix house. And that, of course, its capacity is only like 6, and my memory is that it's about a 40, up to 4 to 6 week stay. But throughout the course of a year, that should at least slightly help reduce our numbers that are having to spend the night in our DSS center. Is that accurate?
Chairman, actually, it should significantly reduce the number of youth in our DSS lobby. And Phoenix House, I'm happy to report, did take our first youth admission on Friday.
So most students, most young people, I keep calling students, most young people would qualify.
That is correct.
But I was just thinking with that, with a number, of course, you described 200 and something nights, and you said the children were 20. And if you think of 26 and they can all serve 6 weeks, that actually, that would take most of them.
Correct, and we do sometimes see the same children cycling in and out of the DSS lobby, so they could also be cycling in and out of Phoenix House. Hopefully, the therapeutic structure that Phoenix House will provide will not be conducive to coming in and out of services, but actually provide some stability.
Last question, that actual additional $50,000, that's not spent at all towards the cost of Turner House, or it is?
It is not.
It is not.
That is just for our reimbursement. So if a child were to come in at 2 a.m., for instance, and we have to hold them for just a little while until we can get that facility ready to receive, then these dollars would offset any cost associated with that.
Okay. Questions?
Please refresh my recollection. In the county manager's recommended budget, a part that we adopted, there were some additional positions for social services. And I don't recall whether the overnight stays was one of the staff loading problems that was.
No, so it's actually for after-hours calls and CPS primarily that we needed the additional staff.
Okay. And how is that going in terms of filling those spots?
I can't answer that exactly, but I will absolutely get you an answer. Oh, Krista's here. Krista can answer that.
Good afternoon. We have those positions posted, but we have not yet filled any of our new positions.
Okay. How long have they been posted?
So they are continuously posted, and every 2 weeks we pull the new applicants out until we fill the position. So we were given 4 new positions, and we already had 2 vacancies. So we have filled 1 of those. We have 5 left, and we're recruiting every 2 weeks.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Sort of a random connection, but there are some job fairs being prepared for some of the displaced school system employees. There might be some overlap here?
Yes, we actually, DSS has 2 tables at the job fair on September the 4th that's being held, and we are doing one to introduce all of the assistants from DSS that people may be eligible for, and 1 table will be for hiring. And then the county also is hosting a hiring table.
We have a lot of departments participating, and our plan is to place as many people as we can.
I believe that the local NAACP chapter also recently noticed a job fair on September 15.
But the one we're doing is through the schools. So the schools are connecting us directly with individuals that are being displaced, and they will have us and my understanding, some other school districts there. So our connection is directly with the schools who are directly serving the individuals that are RIFT.
Right, yeah, they're just looking for additional opportunities. Thank you.
I do have a question as it relates to the vacancies here at the county that could be opportunities for some of the teachers. Do we have an approximate number of how many vacancies?
I'll have to get with Human Resources. They were working with the school system to figure out like what's the kind of job positions that the schools have, then what positions we have. But I mean, I'll tell you, when we've done our own reduction in forces, certainly not to this magnitude, but when we closed our youth detention center as an example, we took detention officers, DSS placed them in child support. I took admin assistant. I mean, other places, like we can place people, utilize their skill sets that they have and put them in various county departments. So they have, our HR director has already met with the school's chief human resources officer and try to figure out what that could look like.
I think it would be helpful to get an approximate number. I think, we hear 350 positions, which technically mean about 280 actual jobs, if you will.
Well, I should be clear. We definitely do not have, we will not be able to place 200 plus people. But I'm hopeful that between county positions as well as other school districts and maybe even other employers, they will be able to identify placements for most, if not all, of the individuals. But we definitely will not have 200 plus positions.
It'd be great if we could get a kind of every meeting report of how well we're, or at least after this meeting, get some idea how it is. It'd just be nice to know how the progress is made.
Well,
I assume the school district's going to do that too.
I hope so. I mean, on my end, again, I want to make sure that the schools are in line with my thinking. Like my thinking is truly, we can place people. We've done this. We know how to do this. Show me their resume. We will sign them up. Contingent job offers. We know how to do that. I'm hopeful that they will allow us to do that as opposed to just coming to our table, here's some information, this is how you can apply. Like, we will hire people on the spot at this job fair if they allow us to do that.
Good. Good. I can't imagine why they would not be allowed that. All righty. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you go back to the scrap tire item? I was looking at the numbers. Some places, tire dealers charge customers for their old tires.
Right.
Is there, whomever brings tires into the landfill, is there a charge on those?
I'm not sure. I will look that up. I will see if I can find the answer for you. I know that what we are doing, it is all based on the tax that is associated with the purchase of new tires. So I'm not sure about if somebody just bringing scrap tires to a landfill, but I can do some research and get an answer for you.
Okay, just get what information.
I kind of think you do. I've taken some tires to the landfill, and if you put them like in the back of your truck, you're going to pay your truck dumping fee. You just have to take the tires to a different spot to drop them off. So you do pay that normal. I don't want to be held to it, but I think it's the normal $7, $8 that you pay when you go in. Actually, if you go with an open truck, it's more, about $13 if you had 4 or 5 tires, you can get rid of them, I think.
Well, what I'm speaking of specifically is if you go to a tire dealer, you get a new set of tires, and I just use the word some because I don't know how many is doing it, is charging the customer X dollars for a tire, the scrap. And so what I'm trying to find out, if that money ends up, it should end up with like the landfill or the government agency looking after that.
So I know that, excuse me, I know that at the tire store, what have you, they send that money directly to the state. The state holds back 30% of it and then distributes 70% of it to counties on a per capita basis, I think on a quarterly basis. And so the retailer is sending that tax to the state, and then the state is providing the funds to the county, and then we are putting it to the city.
You'd need to draw that out for me.
Sure
They
will.
send that back and forth, and probably nobody really knows where it's all at and the end of it. I'm just trying to figure out whether when the customer paid. And I know that there's that excise fee too, that tax, that's different from a tire disposal, I believe. I'm not sure. That's okay. Just find out whatever you can.
All right.
I think what you're talking about is this is all the transactions with money going from the tire dealers to the state and the rebate back. It's kind of returned back to the counties that get distributed to city and county and whatever, how that's done.
Yeah,
But you're talking about what actually happens to the tires that are literally turned in. Is that what you're talking about? The tires that a car dealer sells 4, they take all 4 old tires. The question is, what happens to the 4
The
old tires?
tires go to they might go to the landfill to be picked up, to be recycled or something.
Yes.
Tires are not allowed to be buried in the landfill anymore and haven't been for a while.
Correct.
So they probably get recycled somewhere, some way. There was the old McLean trucking company. There's somebody company that recycles there till probably about, I don't know, 5 years ago, and it had a fire there and burned the place. So, but I would imagine that they are recycled somewhere. At one time, somebody come up with what I thought was a good idea. The state did, experimented with mixing ground up tires and asphalt. And they had one project on 158 East Winston. They've done it, it's been some number of years ago, and I don't know how that worked out, but if it worked good, that'd be a good place for them to be.
I'll see what I can find out for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item number 9 is a resolution authorizing execution of an agreement with Worldwide Technology LLC for renewal of subscription services for cloud-based endpoint management software. Gary Coots, our Chief Information Officer, will brief this item.
Good afternoon. Hope you guys are doing well today. The item before you is to authorize a renewal, a one-year renewal for a cloud-based endpoint management software subscription. We're just coming off of a 3-year renewal. Previous renewal was 3 years. We chose to do a 1-year renewal for this because we've got an item that will come before you from a Microsoft Enterprise Agreement standpoint that becomes effective in March that may displace the need for this software next year. So we just opted for a 1-year renewal. We did seek bids and recommend the lowest bidder. Glad to answer
Questions for Gary?
questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 10 is the adoption of the Community Development Grants Projects Ordinance. Ashley Penley from our Community Economic Development Department will brief this item.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This item establishes the Community Development Grant Projects Ordinance. You may notice a change in the name. This is usually our annual housing GPO that we try to establish. We are aligning the name with our department name and the funding activity, and also to assist with better project organization with the new finance system as well. So this ordinance will continue the county's provision of rehabilitation, reconstruction, demolition, and lead remediation of owner-occupied homes. It also allows for the continuation of services to first-time homebuyers who are eligible for down payment assistance. The total amount of funding in this GPO is $617,725. And those revenue streams include our annual allocation of HUD Home Investment Partnership Program funds, which is $221,000. We have $10,000 coming in from participating municipalities of the home consortium. We have $39,725 as the transfer from the general fund to cover the county's local match requirements. $165 coming from North Carolina Housing Finance Agency's urgent repair program, and another $182,000 to administer NCHFA's 2027 Essential Single Family Rehab Program as well. And these funds will be spent in accordance with the county's and each funder's procurement policy. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
The $221,000 in the home program, that's the first-time home buyer's assistance?
So that money can be used for rehabilitation and down payment assistance.
Okay, thank you. All right, the others limited to the repair rehabilitation costs only?
So the eligible activities that we're currently spending all of these allocations on are rehabilitation and down payment assistance. It also can cover some administrative costs, such as pre-construction, things like that.
Thank you.
Yep.
So the county's kicking in about 40 grand, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's part of the home local match requirements.
Other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda items 11 and 12 are appointments. 11 is an appointment to the Planning Board, and the 12 is the Utility Commission. 13 is a refund by the tax assessor collector, and then 14 through 16 are our reports. 14 is the June appropriations transfer report, 15 is July appropriations transfer report, and 16 is the July financial report. That's all our agenda items, but we do have a discussion item.
Yes, you have at your place really just a draft of a resolution relative to the presentation we had about the Transco pipeline. And I will say, in terms of kind of the development of this, I want to thank Commissioner Bessie for actually working from a document that we actually provided from the Sierra Club. It's kind of what sort of got us started. As a base, and it's also patterned after the Guilford County resolution also. And we used different pieces of that to kind of put together, and I made some very minor editorial corrections, but I think there's some verbiage that basically describes what we heard both from Sierra Club, as well as what we heard from Transco about the project itself and where it's going and what it's going to do. And I think if you'll notice the real issue, the real points are made on page 2 on the now therefore it be resolved, which are really like the 6 kind of, at least request to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission and the Department of Environmental Quality in Raleigh here. You can read them separately. We could discuss each of those recommendations, but it's considering health and safety, environmental, economic, and quality of life concerns, by Forsyth County citizens that affect stakeholders of the Southeast Supply Enhancement Project. Second one is about about a comprehensive environmental assessment to encourage that to happen, which we don't think that's probably already not happened, but to evaluate potential risk. And the third one is to actually ensure that impacted communities are meaningfully consulted and that their input is reflected on the project route and final conditions. That also kind of gets into the number 4, which really is that there's conversation with the local emergency management agencies to ensure that we know what's going on if there is, in the event of some kind of accident, that we have not only an effective communication network, but we know how to address the actual types of emergencies. 5 is any requested water and air quality permits, to deny them if it's determined that unless there are no excessive adverse environmental impacts, and then deny approval unless you're able to do the above steps, which is, it's kind of like being interested in quality of life issues, interested in general environmental protection, interested in the safety of citizens, and the water and quality, and if we can't do that, it should be denied. So if there's any kind of discussion about that, that's kind of I know Dan would probably Commissioner Bessie would like to add to it.
Yeah, I think that's a good overview. Basically, it's both the general concerns that were expressed with specific Forsyth County relevant examples, like the occasion where you've got this large new high-pressure pipeline going along, being co-located with existing pipelines, right between 2 major medical facilities in Kernersville. So asking for those to be carefully studied before any final decisions are made by FERC or the North Carolina permitting agencies. It's not taking absolute yes or no position on the pipeline, but it's specifying concerns that we think deserve additional consideration before final decisions are made.
And I know you've just had a chance to see it, but if there's no objection, we can put this on the agenda for Thursday. So I guess that's kind of if you've seen enough to say okay, or you've seen enough to say not okay.
Who drafted it?
I think I'll let Commissioner Bessie talk about the general draft.
Yeah, we basically started with the template that Guilford County used, and went back and added some language that was Forsyth County specific, like the example that I just noted, and tried to change some language from lawyer speak to English. And
that was my role in the process.
And also dropped some references in the Guilford that just really didn't seem relevant to Forsyth. So it used that kind of template that the Guilford commissioners had used for length and simplicity. So it wasn't trying to write a legal brief, but it was just trying to cite, okay, these are the concerns we think need to be further studied.
At a glance, all is well, and I trust you, Dan, so that's fine. Commissioner Bessie? Yeah, we're good.
I'd like to ask our county attorney, not to put you on the spot, but are you okay with this verbiage?
I mean, it's really up to the board. I haven't had any part in this. It's really up to the board as to what you want to do.
Have you looked at it?
I mean, I've seen it, but
Concerns?
well, it just depends. I mean, FERC and the state have different standards, and they're looking at different things. So the DEQ is specifically looking at water quality and then air quality at 2 compressor stations, and there really wasn't any specific testimony about any of that before you, but you all are free to do what you want, obviously, and to put anything you want to before both FERC and the state.
And honestly, if there are any legal concerns that our attorney would have about the language, we can make changes. This was a draft, intended as a draft that could be, yeah, couldn't it?
I think the county attorney was trying to communicate that all these non-legal changes make it difficult for him to assess it. Yeah, I have some just legal concerns as well, you know, how this is parsed between FERC, if that's how you say it, and DEQ, and their missions are disparate at this point. And it seems like I recall from the presentations that the target date for actual construction moving forward on this was next spring. Is that correct? Roughly? Okay. So how long would this assessment take? Just curious.
I would think that this kind of information is the kind of material that ought to be addressed during FERC's review and during DEQ's review, and they have timetables for decisions this fall. Either way, I mean, either an approval or a denial is likely to be litigated, and so depending on what any considering court decided, it could be pushed well past Transco's goal construction rate, but that wouldn't necessarily be a part of this review process.
Well, with that understanding, yeah, I get what the timetable will be with litigation.
Okay.
So are we good for the agenda?
We're good.
All right. Okay.
All right, I just have a closed session motion. I need to ask the board to consider a motion to go into closed session to discuss 2 matters relating to the location or expansion of industries or other businesses in the area served by the public body, including agreement on a tentative list of economic development incentives that may be offered by the public body and negotiations pursuant to the provisions of North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A4. And since there's no other business to come before the board at this meeting, following the closed session, the meeting will be adjourned.
Happy to make that motion. Do you have a second? Second by Commissioner Wizenhut. We're done. We're adjourned.